Hello there, welcome to the Real Life Guitars workbench, and what we've got here is Rich's E99 Epiphone, no, Encore, I think otherwise known as the Encore Blaster, which is a budget Les Paul copy type guitar, and it's kind of it's one step up from the basic Encore Les Paul copy. Like that, it is also a bolt-on neck, which isn't a problem. It actually makes quite a nice adjustable neck for reasons I'll probably come on to later. It's a reasonably thick body, and it's shaped, so it's got a carve to it, which is quite incredible. It's a little bit thin overall, I suppose, but and it's got an unbound neck, and I think it looks like a plastic nut on here, and some Guitar Tech pickups, which are okay. They're not fantastic, they're not terrible, but they're a little bit what I would call over. Don't know. I keep trying to find a word. I call them hyper real. They're a bit sparkly, over artificially sparkly. Perhaps some people might call it too bright for their liking. So it's as if they've been sort of made to be, you know, everything's turned up to 11 in terms of the tone. But anyway, so what we've got here is a guitar which Rich is a beginner or a relative newcomer to playing, and he's in learning mode. And so what he wants is a guitar that isn't sort of all out kind of heavy distortion, doesn't want hyper powerful pickups. So what I thought might be a nice change, he asked me if I'd recommend an upgrade, but not for much money. So what I've gone for is this set of Warman P90s, humbucker-sized P90s, which we're going to replace this out with. So it gives it a bit more of a bit less of a all-out feel, and should make a fairly melodic sounding instrument. Now, what we've got here is something that's, I think, massively out of tune. So generally this guitar is mostly, it's a little bit neck heavy, as you can see. That's the result of not having quite enough mass in the body region, but it's not too bad, and certainly not bad if you're sitting down playing it on your knee, kind of thing. Okay, I think I did hear this playing. Yes, it did play. Okay. The nut is functional. It's not fitted into the slot properly. Works quite smoothly. A little bit of ping. Jangle in the neck position. By the time you get down to the bridge, it's okay, they're not bad, you know, I've seen worse or heard worse, but I just thought for £35 this would be quite a nice little improvement, and I think Rich is going to enjoy it. I do wish we could do something about that. Maybe I'll stick a little bit of lead in the old cavity if there's any room. Probably isn't, but you know, obviously a less slippery strap would help. But it's a shame to end up having to sort of hold the guitar down, and it just goes to show that there isn't an awful lot on here. I mean, it's not the world's heaviest neck, and they aren't the biggest tuners in the world, but just that neck alone is too much for this body, with a big cut out here obviously, and another one there and a couple there. So As it currently stands, we've actually got an inconsistent but not a bad first fret action. We've got a bit of a gnarled up nut slot which needs kind of cleaning out and taking care of, so we'll do that. And basically take it all apart, have a look at it, do a bit of cleaning, polish it up, put it back together again with the new pickups in, wire them in, and then basically we're looking to do a good setup after that. Like I said, I'm not going to do much with this now, but not bad pickups here. I'm not criticising them. They're for a basic, well, second step up Encore. It's not bad. Trevor Wilkinson did the right thing with those, but as I say, I find them just a little bit too tinkly. So the idea will be, let's replace it. So the thing is, before I take it all apart, I want to use these strings for sacrificial setup purposes. So what I want to know straight away is what the gauge is to replace with. That's 42s. Okay, what I have here okay, so what we're going to do is just do the usual thing, but I think first of all we'll take this plastic nut out of the picture. We want to get rid of that because it's, oh well, it's going to move anyway. Freewheeling, but we need to clean the slot out a little bit as we go. So the action setup I'm going to do is 3 parts as always, and it's going to be the where's my thing? 3 parts is going to be the last fret action, the first fret action, and the neck relief. So we'll do all those together. They are interrelated, so you do one and the others are slightly different afterwards. So you have to just be conscious of that. And there isn't a way, because they are interrelated, there can't be a way where you set one and the others don't change that one you've just set. It just can't happen. So you just have to really remember that they are interrelated, and that if you start with a first fret action of such and such, then by the time you've adjusted the neck relief, you may find that then you don't have the same action after that. So you just need to know that one is going to come down slightly. Okay, so I've got quite a few spare sort of Les Paul-y style, or yeah, these will do, Les Paul style bone nuts, and this one happens to fit. Yeah, no, this isn't a very tidy slot. I might just have a look up close. Now in setting up guitars, I've found that getting the nut right, or improving the nut and its function, is an incredibly important part of setting it up, and it's worth changing, using a new nut, and it's also worth taking the time to get it as right as you can. Come on, I just want this held out of the way, please. Probably a bit more slack would work. Yes, it really is worth taking the time to get it right, because the nut is responsible for basically how well or the guitar stays in tune or doesn't, along with the amount of string slack there still is in your strings, which can be quite a lot. That's pretty clever, it's just cut through, which can be quite a lot. So the two things together, the way that the nut slots are cut and the first fret action, sorry, in terms of tuning, the way that the nut slots are cut dictates how, it's about half, you could say, of your tuning stability, and the other half is how much unreleased slack there is in your strings still, and it can be an incredible amount. It's not really worth getting into any long-winded discussion about whether or not the strings themselves actually stretch, and I go with people who've made arguments to me that it's impossible for a piece of steel wire to stretch, and I kind of get the physics and engineering behind that, so I'm not going to argue that the string actually stretches, but we can just take it as read that what I mean by string stretch is in fact unreleased slack in the string train. So whether it's from being wrapped around the post or being kind of snagged somewhere else in the whole system, when we say stretch we mean the unreleased slack in the whole overall string train. Okay, so this is a very uneven nut, and it's actually starting out quite fairly low, so I don't have a hell of a lot of room to dig downwards on this to level it up. So it's one of these ones where I've got to make something in a minute out of Milliput for another purpose, and I'm wondering whether this would be a good time to make a little extra and use it as a little bit of padding to fill this, because it looks like it's going to sit fairly nicely in here. Well, I don't know about that actually. It's a bit of a lousy slot. It's partly because it's got this huge great lip of lacquer, and then it becomes very difficult to cut a straight edge into that. But yeah, but nevertheless I still might get me a bit of Milliput going, since do I need to make something? I'm thinking ahead, 2 setups ahead. What I was talking about was I've got a setup coming in this week. It's going to have another one of these adjustable nuts, or adjustable nut inserts in it. And for that I have to make a Milliput base, but I seem to have already made one here. Now I didn't know whether that was actually good and ready to go yet, so let's actually with lettering this, God, it's really bad to see. Craft Tech, so it's that way around. So are we anywhere near? Oh, yeah, we are actually. That's workable. So I don't need to make one, but I could still mix a bit of stuff anyway. Yeah, so I think I would like to have a solid footing here, and I don't want a big gap on this end of the nut, because in most of it fits, but it just hangs out. I would hardly need any material, to be honest. Let's do a little bit more leveling down, see if we can get it just about right. It seems it's a good idea, that Milliput stuff, but it seems like a lot of work for just the tiniest amount. So funny enough, feels like I'm in the dark room here. I can't see much anymore. Now, sometimes you just have to accept that you aren't going to get this thing in perfectly square, and what you might need to do is to sand down a little bit on the nut itself, rather than try and dig further out or dig further into the base. So as long as I get a kind of square edge on the front where it meets. See, the thing is, it's square, but the slot really is all over the place. I want it to sit there, and it wants to rock around. Do you know what? I'm going to do it for once. I'm going to make a little bit of the old Milliput, if I can remember where I put it. Hello? Milliput, where are you? Brilliant. Up here, I've lost it. Where could it have gone? Like that. Wiring diagrams, bits and pieces, spare pieces. Milliput. I knew it was here. So this is it's going to be the smallest volume of Milliput I think I'll ever have mixed. Just around the edge of the blade, that will help. So I'm just going to make me just enough to fill, or try and make me just enough to fill the gaps. Very handy stuff. You may see that I've used it here to make a reciprocal base for this adjustable nut. Anyway, it obviously needs shaving down to the right size, but it's very useful to, I always start by making it completely oversized. You have to really, and then work it down to the small piece you need. Now the difficulty with Milliput is you have to get pretty much dead on the exact amount for it to work properly. If you get it slightly wrong, or if they're slightly uneven, you don't get a very good set. So I'm just going to look at these things together. I think that's probably good enough. And then I've mixed them together in a string. Mix them together some more. And throw it on the floor. It's very, very useful stuff. And the other thing I think I've learned from this is mix it very, very well. So this, I'm going to use this as a little bedding material. And I don't want to raise the nut miles off the slot. Because that'll just sort of defeat the object, and I'll end up having to carve nut slots from now till the cows come home. But I don't like that ugly gap, so I'm going to see. Alright, Morris, I'm going to see what I can do. So I'm going to put a little string of putty in and a little bit more at the edges and let it sort of stick out, and then we can always sand that off. So for example, let's say that was going to be my bead of putty down the middle. See, I can't even get it to stay straight. It's going to spit out everywhere, and it's sticky, and I can't manipulate it because my hands are now sticky thanks to the bizarrely sticky Milliput. This will do. Okay. It does stay soft for quite a long time, so you have a fair bit of time to work the stuff, which is handy. So that's not a very good device. Hadn't thought about my what do you call them? My spatulas and whatnot. So I'm just going to start with a bit in here, and don't really need that much. I need more at this far end than anywhere else. I'm just going to let it build up a little bit at the far ends and do a similar thing there. As you can see, it's a little bit difficult to use. It kind of wants to go, it wants to stick to everything but the thing you want to stick it to. As you can see here, it's not sticking to the surface very well. Stay. Thank you. Again, we can sort of clean off stuff a bit afterwards. So hardly any used in the first usage. Wipe that away. Just gently sort of prod it down, and then I'll sort of try and spread it a bit thicker towards the edge. Now that's probably way too much in there, so I'll sort of just tease some bit out so we don't end up completely clogging the slot. Now, kind of one shot at this really. Here's our nice nut, and here is where I want it to sit. Now I think probably a good thing to do with this is to use the strings. You can sort of pull off like this, a bit rough, but these are our sacrificial strings, so let's get those on if we can. Come on. Thank you. Sort of. I'm getting covered in Milliput, but I don't mind. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this to pull down, and we'll put the nut under pressure as it sits there. I'll try not to get loads of this on my hands because it comes off onto surfaces very easily. So I can see some of it squidging out already, which is good. And pulling it sideways, which it will always do when you've got an uneven load, stupidly. Okay, so now I'm going to pull off any obviously loose stuff, and I'm going to clean up as I go. Right, let's get a note that's roughly close to playing. God, this tuner is ghastly. Okay. Now I don't mind that I've got various bits of goop sticking out. What we've got is a full up, we've got a little bit sticking out the edge which we can pull off, and we've got the gaps basically filled up, and we can, if we want to, we can sort of level it off, and we can worry about leveling it precisely with, we could just sand it down a bit later. Actually, it looks like what's happened is it's gone a fraction this way, so we'll just push it that way. Now I'm going to get some tissue and just try and clear up for the time being. It isn't the easiest thing in the world to do, it makes a right mess. And I actually don't know what works solvent wise with this, so you just have to basically get it off before it sets. That's the answer, and it's quite difficult. So that is a bit of a messy slot there, which we can sand down a bit later on. It's never going to be perfect, but what I really want is it to sit in the slot properly more than anything else, so I'm not too worried about how it looks. It looks a bit better on this side, it fills the slot quite nicely. Okay, now realistically we'd be better off leaving this to set for some time now, because then it will kind of hold everything in place, and actually it will also just hold down the nut as well, so it doesn't go anywhere. I can't stop it smudging down here because it's such a ragged gap. Let me pull it upwards, and then what I can do is just feed a little bit more into that gap from here. And I think we'll probably find that when we come to sand the excess bone off, we'll take the excess milliput off as well. But obviously you're going to try and start with not too much in one go, although we will sand back a bit. finally getting a little bit tidier. Yeah, what's happened is that the lacquer around this ragged nut slot has been kind of mangled a bit, so when you fill it with something else it looks ragged, but that's going to have to be the way it is. Now there's a bit of overspill here which I can clear up when it's set, but there's a bit of kind of sticky overspill that I'd like to get rid of now, and that's on here. I can get it off afterwards as well, but I think I just prefer to pick it up before it sets. That's basically here. I've got some nice scratch remover stuff which will do a fine job in removing any surface spill from this Milliput anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem. And there's a little bit of Milliput coming up the front here which I'll scrape off afterwards or sand off, so I don't need to worry too much about that. But I do want to get this stuff off just there if I can. Just begin with. There you go. And we'll clean up later. Right, so I'm going to park this now for now, and if I can just get the nut to stay in the right place, that would be helpful. I'll do the middle. That's what I've done. I've slacked off these. Didn't help, did it? That's always the way. You break a string because it's so old and knackered. Right, so now I don't have a spare 9 on any such thing, so I'm going to slack this off. I can pull this to the middle and leave this set as is, and then I'll have to worry about finding me a spare, I'm doing it again, I have to worry about finding me a spare string because I don't have any such things. Right, I'm getting a bit annoyed with myself now because this is a bit of a mess because it's a ragged shaped hool. I'm trying to make it, I've just chucked the rest of the thing away as well, trying to make it as tidy as I can make it, fill that little gap that's kind of sticking out there. But it's difficult to do that and clean up around it because yeah, the hole is uneven. Please stay there. Right, let's borrow a bit from here. I think I'm just going to leave that set and worry about cleaning up the little tiny bits left over afterwards, because otherwise it will just keep moving and we'll never get it set. Okay, now I've lost track of the spacing. Right. This is not a nice material. It's very, oh no, I've got some spare here. It's very handy, but you get sort of tied up in worrying about getting it on your hands, and then suddenly you're, oh God, it's annoying me. You're chasing, trying to clean it up, and then it's coming off everywhere. Right, that should be the right position. Let's get a little bit of excess on here finally, just to, we'll come back and sand that down when the time is right. It's easier to do it when it's hardened, frankly. And that looks about right from the outset. Okay, and then let's do the obvious bits around here that we don't need to leave gooey. It's very difficult to clean up around it without clipping the edge of the Milliput and sending more of the gunge flying, like that bit which is stuck to me. Right, so to do this setup I'm going to need to basically borrow another sacrificial string from somewhere along the way, which is going to have to be from something that I'm currently got in the house that probably needs a restring, so I don't mind using something from there, but there we go. Right. So like I say, not a precise line here, but that's because it's ragged from the start, so ain't nothing we can do about that. I'm just trying to blend it in a bit so that we can clear up. Yeah, it was a bit of a mess from the outset. Okay, it really is bad, a massive crack in here. It's terrible. Okay, and that's actually sitting nicely in the slot, so we don't want to do anything else with that. Okay, I'm going to park it and throw all these bits of stuff away. The crappy plastic nut, the string, this little pot, this little piece of stuff. We'll call it quits for today. And there's our, keep that handy, that's our truss rod cover as well. Okay. And then I have to try and figure out what substance removes the Milliput. Okay, so anyway, that's a bit of a slow down thing, but I have to say it's always going to be a bit like that because this stuff is that nut slot was really messy, and I want the nut to work really well, so it's now just about the right height. Actually, it might need the tiniest of tweaking, but it definitely needed that material under there to stop it from rocking around, so we'll do a bit of trimming later on when we can. Get most of this off me if I can. Yeah, I'll worry about that later. Okay, so next step, find a spare 9, string it. I'm just out of interest to see what the relief is like. There is some in there, yep, but it's actually on the slack at the moment because I didn't want the thing to move. So it's quite straight, that's okay, but we might put a little bit more in. Anyway, we'll leave it for now and get back onto it. But there we are, we will have these lovely Warman single coil, humbucker-sized P90s. Very nice things. Very black. But currently, while I've got this Milliput on my fingers, that's best to put out of the way. Okay, so see you for the next bit. Hey, here we are, back again with Rich's Les Paul Copy, the Encore, and a quick changeover. I checked in with him yesterday to see whether he wanted the Tusq nut, adjustable Tusq nut fitted, and he said he did. So I've just taken off the original one and replaced it, well, it's basically filed, sanded down a base for the Tusq nut, which I've made in Milliput, which is actually quite a useful material to do this with. So this is the adjustable Tusq unit sitting on a Milliput base, and that itself is sitting on top of still a little bit of the bedding of that stuff, Milliput, because the that nut slot is a little bit uneven from somewhere in the past. So what I'm going to do is, in a minute, I'm going to, I will eventually glue this down just lightly, but to begin with, I'm just going to check it, right, and I'm going to restring and set the guitar up with this nut in place. So we'll kind of work with that. So I'll just do the center strings. Now obviously this will start off being too low. We will raise this up. I replaced the string. Actually, I took one off for SG over there, which I was going to restring soon anyway. But funnily enough, as I took it off the SG, it snapped coming off the SG. So it was the second one I broke. Anyway, the point being is I now I managed to find another one. So okay, so the nice thing about these adjustable nuts is that you can put them on and sort of dial them straight into a playable action, which is pretty nice and low. Now, whether or not they're the exact same radius as the guitar itself is not exactly guaranteed, but you'd think they would be close to a 12, given that they're designed for 3-a-side Les Paul style guitars. Anyway, so what I'm going to do, going to tune these up. For a second, and then look at what we've got. So 3 parts. I'm just going to start getting in the way. 3 parts of the setup, or 3 parts of the playing action that we concern ourselves with to begin with, and those are the first fret action, the last fret action, first fret, last fret, and the curvature of the neck, the relief. So now what I want is, let's start with the last fret, and actually let's go with the relief. That's always a good place to start. So we hold down the last string and the first string, and we look at what's there, and it's very, very slight. So you'd want it about 0.2 millimeters, something like that. Now, I'm not really that concerned with the exactness of this. Some people like more or less, depending on the feel. The important thing to know is that the more relief there is in the centre of the neck, the more space there is for the strings to move nearer their centre. This is not massively responsive, but we'll leave it and see if it picks up. Now I've got some cleaning up to do of this fill over the end here, but actually let's have a quick look down here. Yeah, that fits nicely. Building up that little bit of I don't know what we would call it, worn out, where the nut slot has been carved down at one end in the past, which makes it difficult to seat a nut in it properly. Anyway, we've got about 1/10 of a millimeter relief, and we'll let that, see if that takes any effect, having adjusted it, but I don't think we will get much more out of it. It's not a hugely responsive neck, this. That's one of the limitations of an old and sometimes an older and cheaper guitar. So what I'm looking for is to go down now and set an action at the last fret, close to where I'd like it. And I would like it somewhere around about the 1.5 millimeter mark. So I'm going to dial it in till we get roughly there. And again, the numbers aren't critical, they're just a guideline for what I'm aiming for. I know that if I register what I read across here as 1.5 down to 1.2, to me I know that that translates into a nice playing action when it's all done. But the truth is, I don't care whether it's, truthfully I don't care whether it's actually 1.5 or whether it's in reality, using more accurate tools, it's 1.3. It ends up being an action that I know will play well with the guitar. So I would much heartily recommend that you go after a playing action that feels good and that you can repeat again and again, rather than be kind of obsessing about a number. Okay, so we've got a little bit of buzz here, but we don't know what it's from exactly, but we'll find out as we go. It's not caused by the neck being humped in the centre, which sometimes can be the case if you've got back bow and no relief. So instead of being slightly curved, the neck is in fact humped, and it means notes played down here will buzz all the time. Actually, most of them will be choked off. But this is playing okay now. I'll just close the door. Morris has done a runner. Heater back on. Okay, so now just rechecking it through. I've got 1.5 to 1.2. This bridge isn't massively even. It's got a radius to it, but you know, it just looks to go up in a couple of bit of steps, but it's not too bad. We've got some of the adjuster screws rattling here, which is often a problem you get with tunematic bridges. I actually heard about somebody wax potting one of these the other day to stop it rattling. It's actually not a bad idea. I'm tempted to do it. Also, I'm noticing that this is almost standing out of the guitar, this here bushing, so we'll have to look at that when we take it apart. But while I've got the sacrificial strings, the old strings, on, I'm just going to do the setup part of it now. So that involves the last fret action, the neck relief, checking it that's got some, no more than 0.2. I've done as much adjustment as I think it will do, and it has got a bit more of a gap now than it did before, which is good. And we've got an action of the first fret, which just eyeballing it, as I like to say, is actually probably just a fraction low. Now I aim for between 0.3 and 0.4. Stay. Hear those? That's the bridge rattling. Horrible. Now, this isn't actually that bad. Worse on the low strings, and there are a couple of frets which aren't perfectly seated, so basically we'll take care of those in a gentle fret leveling. So I'm just going to get the tuning to where I want it to be one more time. Okay. Actually, this isn't bad. This will take a little bit of fret leveling very well, and that's what the plan now is. So next stage, before we do any of the pickup changing, next stage is to gently level these frets, because we've got the basic action set where we want it. Just chatting on email to Stuart, who I did the Thomas Blug Strat, vintage V6 Strat for the other day, and I've kind of been reflecting on the first fret actions that I sometimes set using when I'm using a fixed bone nut, for example. And what I've realised over a couple of years of doing this is that I get very nice low actions, but occasionally they the fact that they're so low opens me up to risk of things changing when the guitar goes into a different temperature or goes from one part of the country or one part of the world to another, and the changes in the guitar neck have to be only tiny for that to cancel out the clearance needed to make the strings ring out cleanly. So while some people really love that sort of precise low action, it can be counterproductive for me, because sometimes, and for the customer, because sometimes if it's too close to the mark, you know, a whiff of breeze can, you know, alter the set of the neck a little bit. I mean, these are, we're talking tenths of a millimeter, if that. So I think one of the things I've learned is to try to step back up. So for example, I sent the Thomas Blug back with an action that was very low, and actually quite a lot lower than I was able to achieve the last time I did a Thomas Blug, which was obviously the same in that it had a 7.25 radius. And if there's one thing I've learned over all this time is that it's a kind of, you're on hiding to nothing if you push and try to get the same low playing action, and we're talking to differences tenths of a mil. But if you go for the sort of the absolute lowest of low playing actions with a 7.25 millimeter, sorry, 7.25 inch radius neck, you can end up paying for it because you just can't do it. So I realised as I sent the Thomas Blug back to Stuart with a much lower, relatively speaking, much lower playing action than the previous one I did, where I recognised limitations of the 7.25 inch radius on how low you can actually get it, with, you know, regardless of how much fret leveling you do. So I think in future I'm going to just hold back a little bit from, you know, this ultimate quest for the barest, lowest possible action, which gives me and the customer very little, or if none at all, leeway, you know, with any kind of temperature or climatic changes, because it's just bad news for them and it's bad news for me in return, or, you know, in consequence. So it's quite a funny one to do, to sort of hold back on it. So for example, what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to not go below the 1.5 and 1.2, which is the absolute working minimum for a guitar, especially one with a 12-inch radius like this. It should be doable, shouldn't cause any problems. A couple of high frets there. So there shouldn't be any major problems at 1.5 across to 1.2, but not to go below that. You can hear the high frets there, the high fret causing a little bit of sizzling, but then you've got this sympathetic vibration down here, which is confusing, or can confuse the issue if you don't know, if you're not used to the difference between buzz here and fret vibration. And it's funny because there kind of tends to be at least three kinds of buzzes you can get, possibly four. So one of them is what we know as fret buzz, and that's caused by a high fret getting in the way of, two low frets there. A high fret getting in the way, or low frets creating the next fret as high. That's a cause of it, which is a real downer. See, look, it doesn't like that. No, it doesn't, but you know why it doesn't like that? That's because it's hitting the pickup. So there's proper fret buzz. Then next on that there is what I call fret slap, which is where if there's no relief in the neck, frets can will hit the strings will hit the frets as they're struck, as the strings are struck, plucked, strummed, whatever. And you can get that if the action is too low, and also in conjunction with the fact that there's no curvature, aka relief in the neck. And that's not technically fret buzz. I mean, it is the frets buzzing, but it's kind of easier to distinguish that from high fret. So I call it fret slap because the frets could very well be level, but you'll still get that slap because there's no curvature in the neck and the action's too low. Third one, which can be really annoying, is the tunematic bridge rattle, and that is very common with tunematic bridges. I was going to say cheap ones, but actually it seems to be common with just about any. Often the cheap ones rattle more, but little components sympathetically vibrate. And then the fourth one, probably more, but the fourth one I can think of is other components rattling. And sometimes, for example, if a truss rod is in its slack position, either it's fully unwound and there's no further it can go, or if it's between, if it's one that can adjust in both directions, if it's in the sort of in-between position, then that adjuster itself can vibrate sympathetically when the guitar is strummed, and again that can cause a really annoying buzz that people can mistake as fret buzz. And I guess there's a fifth one, is it? I suppose the fifth one, which can be really infuriating for me because it can cause problems but not be anything that I can put right, and that can be bad playing technique. Sometimes people make strings buzz because they aren't cleanly fretting the strings. Okay, that's good. I'm seeing a couple of things here, like for example there's some really high frets. Generally there's some big high frets here, here, here and here, and then there's a set here of about 3 that are just so low they're not hardly getting touched at all by the fret leveling beam, or the banana as I call it. But this is getting there. Now I'm kind of expecting to see more cutting now on the frets because these 2 bottom strings sounded roughest of all as far as the fret buzz was concerned, and yes, it was what I would call fret buzz. So I'm now going to try and just level these out. Again, I'm seeing these 2 frets that aren't even being touched, so they are relatively low. I'm just getting down to them now, so they're just picking them up and cutting up the tops of them a little bit. There's a couple of low ones there now. It's always funny, that thing about the low frets. They are kind of your lowest common denominator, if you like. Just in that the low frets kind of make the next ones high, and if fret buzz is to do with high frets getting in the way of the strings, it kind of doesn't really matter to the physics of the guitar whether the string is buzzing because the fret behind is low and therefore it kind of makes the next fret high, or whether the next fret is just high. So the physics don't really care, it still ends up with buzzing. And so if you find yourself with, put it another way, most of the time when you find low frets you can basically level your way out of it, most of the time. And most of the time the amount of lowness in a little cluster of frets is small, and you basically gently bring the other frets down to the level of the low frets. Now That might to some people sound like terribly destructive to all the other frets just to get down to the low fret, but you have to remember that as you're doing that, you're leveling and cleaning up the other frets as well at the same time. So let's say if they were all perfect except for 2 low ones, then it would be a really terrible shame to sort of take away fret metal off the other frets to get down to the 2 frets that have been, let's say, hammered in too hard in the beginning. But of course it isn't usually like that. What's usually happening is, to get down to that level, you're taking away all the imperfections on the top of all the other frets too. Still this damn thing rattling. There you go, a little bit of buzz there. Just checking the relief. That should be enough relief. So I'm going to do a tiny bit more leveling on this A, because that was the noisy one. Again, this is a very low action, and this is as low as I'm going to go. Because to do anything else is to just set up. It builds in risk, I suppose. Put it that way. It's counterproductive. It's only taken me 600 or 700 in total, or more, to get to that point. But you get so kind of tied up in pushing it to the lowest you can possibly get. It's quite an exciting challenge to see how far you can get. Okay, so this is the A track, as I call it, and I'm just going to even that out. This has made a fair bit of dust, but the amount it's taken just shows how uneven the frets were. Okay, that's good. How uneven the frets were to begin with. Okay, so having done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let me just think of something. I'm just thinking of something. Hold on. I want to do something with this bridge, and some people in the know recommend putting a dab of glue, wood glue, onto these things once they're intonated to stop them sympathetically rattling. Now, one of the things I did was I pushed a bit of foam into each one, just to kind of put the blade here under a little bit of pressure, which hopefully would kind of jam the screw somewhere as well, because you can't really do anything to the screw. However, there are lots of other things you can do. What I won't do is I'm not going to put Loctite on it, because that actually runs the risk of making it nigh on impossible to adjust again in the future. I've been caught out that way in the past. I've done a couple of things that seemed like a really good idea. What I was thinking just there was, do I intonate it now and blob a bit of glue on and then leave it? But let's take it off, and we'll carry on with the process. If it comes to when I come to intonate, and the guitar's cleaned up with new strings on and everything, what I'll do is I'll either, between now and then, I'll either wax it, or I will do a little dab of glue in a couple of strategic places right at the end, and then once we're intonated and everything's fine, we'll just leave that and see if that improves the rattling or the buzzing. And if not, then we'll consider something else. But it's a funny thing. These are pretty horrible creatures. Ooh, that one doesn't even look very strong. Yeah, horrible rattly things. But I'm thinking a little bit of glue on the end here, and then a little bit of glue in this joint here once we're intonated. My concern about trying to wax it is actually, by the time you wax this, you'll have wax everywhere, except, I mean, well, you just wouldn't even be able to clean it off properly. I think it would be a bit of a sticky blob if you try to wax pot this. Could be wrong. I could do a test. That might just be real good fun to do at some point. I've got plenty of spare ones I could try it on. So just to begin with, I'm just going to brush off some of the dust from the fret leveling. And then, while I'm at it, I'm going to crown these files, I say that all the time, crown these frets again, or reprofile, and that means where there's a flat spot now, I want to reshape that into a arch shape. Now these frets were in pretty good, well, relatively good condition. There was a bit of wear down this end, as you quite often find where people play open chords. So I've taken most of that wear away, and now I can take the flat spots, and with this tool I can turn them into arch shaped structures so that the string sits on the very top of the hill and top of an arch rather than on a flat shelf, and that's really important for the notes ringing out properly and also being intonated properly. Can make as much as a millimetre or so, or even 2 in some cases, difference, which is quite a lot when it comes to intonation. So these are needing a reasonable amount of work, but they are reshaping nicely, and they will polish out beautifully as well a little bit later on when we come to that. Also, I'm going to stick this down, but I don't. Actually, I'll do it. Will I do it now? Yeah, I'll probably do it next. Once we've done the... Actually, no, I don't need to. I can do that later. What I'm going to do is take the guitar apart. I'm going to clean up this headstock by taking the tuners off. And it's a little 10-minute excursion. I'll do it off camera because it's just mindless stuff, but it's a little extra bit of effort. But you can make an old guitar like this shine up beautifully well if you take a half hour or so extra to do it. So why not? Now also, while I'm doing this, I'm keen to have a look inside. Once I've done the frets, then obviously I can look in and see what the wiring's like, and if there's anything we need to do in there urgently. This one's got quite a bit of levelling being done on it, so I have to work a bit harder on that one. So after this, I've got a refinishing job to do on Al's Fender neck. A couple of little blemishes and marks that I accidentally put in it with my fretting call, believe it or not, which was a bit annoying. But anyway, so that needs to be, I need to refinish that in poly. So I'm going to, it's a kind of two-stage thing. I'm going to do the bulk of it, build it up. I tried doing a spot repair actually, and it's very difficult to blend colours when you're doing that. The human eye can spot a gradient very, very easily, and it can spot discontinuous gradients incredibly easily. So it's very hard, for that reason, it's very hard to spot finish or spot refinish. So I decided to go the whole hog and take it back to wood and build it up again. And I'll do most of it manually or by hand, same thing. And then I'll take it down to my friend John Bruce Guitars, and I think I'll get him to do some finishing coats while I'm there. I've been meaning to get down to see him for ages, but it's a kind of good excuse to go and check him out. He does some absolutely amazing finishes. Some of his special ones are mirror finishes. He does quite a lot of he has done quite a lot of RG, Ibanez RGs as well, and they're in some of the mirror finishes that he's done, just unbelievable. But this will be straightforward. This will be a satin poly on top of hand applied poly. So I'm going to lovingly hand apply a basic build-up of layers, and then I'm going to sand it flat, not flat, but sand it back, and then I'll take it down for some finishing coats. It's actually possible, I've discovered now over time, it's entirely possible. Let's just look what's under here. Okay, no shim, it's just a bit of leftover gunge. Yeah, it's entirely possible to do that kind of finishing by hand. You just have to take your time, and you have to be very careful in the flatting back process. Okay, so I'm going to get a little tray because I want to take most of the bits off here. So I need a container. There, falls on the floor. So I think some people probably get frightened at the sight of everything coming off their guitar, but it's actually surprisingly quick. Do I need these? Les Paul, Ace Pro, I need one of. No, I'm not doing any of that work. Now I can jump these. Good. Saves me a bit of time. Yeah, it can look really extreme taking the whole guitar apart, but once you've done it tons of times, it's actually not daunting at all. So I've got some really interesting things coming down through the pipeline. I can go there for a minute. I've got a is it Richie Cousins? I don't know how you pronounce the name. Cousins, Telecaster coming down. Fender made thing, pretty expensive beastie. Has a kind of custom or special rotary switch instead of a tone control to give you some parallel series switching, which sounds pretty cool. But this one is one that's developed what seems like a grounding fault, and somebody's had a go at fixing it, and kind of felt like they wanted to pass it over and ask for a second opinion or third and fourth opinion on it. So that's coming down here, and at the same time it's going to get a setup as well as having the control plate rewired. But it's really interesting to look at the pictures of the gubbins. The legend has it that on these particular Fenders, the switches are the kind of, they're not your Oak Grigsby style things. They have sort of plastic white casing, and they're eight lugs in line type switch, and they look really cheap. And apparently they're Goto, and they're supposed to be Japanese made Gotos, and they're supposed to be good quality, so there isn't supposed to be anything to worry about them. But I think both the chap who's sending it and I, kind of initial reaction was, wow, that just looks like the £1.19 Chinese import switches you can buy. But clearly, he says, clearly they're not. Anyway, we shall see. What I did also look at is the quality of the pot. The volume pot just looked absolutely bog standard. You'd sort of think for a £1,800 guitar, you'd be hoping to see a CTS or something like that. You know, I mean, not even, you know, you can get in a whole argument about whether that actually changes anything about the tone. I think what's certain is that it has a better quality of materials in it. I'm not sure I could. I'm pretty certain I couldn't tell the difference in tone. I would be lying if I said I could. Some people believe they can, and that's fine. But what, you know, even if you couldn't, and the real issue was, hey, for my 1,800 quid, can I have a nice quality brass and alloy, brass and steel built pot, please? You know, give me a sort of feeling it might last longer. Whether that's true or not, it would be a sort of perceptual thing that I kind of hope that they'd put in for that sort of money. But it doesn't seem like it, so who knows? Right, hang that there for a second. And while we're at it, we're going to be in here anyway. So I want to get into all of this stuff and give it a good clean. So while I'm at it, why not? Let's use this fabulous thing. If I can remember how it works. You put it over there, slide it in the side like that, push it over there, I believe so, and then you pull the pots up like that. Ooh, knobs, not pots. Fantastic. It's kind of common sense, didn't come with instructions, but you've got to sort of work it out, it can't be that hard. Whether or not it goes right over and locks, I don't really know, but it works just like that. And it's far better than wrenching away with levers and things. Now I'm going to take this out and this, because we're going to put everything back together again fresh. I'm taking these out because I also want to, so I want to do something with that. I think I'm going to resin that in. Why? Because I don't want this pulling up and out. Do I really want to resin it in? Honestly, no, but I don't want it falling out. Pulling up, that's what I don't want. I'll leave that as is for a minute. Let's just take these off. Just looking at, as I'm doing this, since I want to take most of these things off anyway to clean it, and I'm changing the pickups, I like to have a look and see if there's anything that's about to break or that I can take care of. And it's a kind of practical jaunt mixed in with nosiness and curiosity. So I get to look at yet another internals of a guitar and see if it's anything different or interesting from what I've seen before, or whether there's anything I can forestall so that Rich doesn't have any surprises down the line and this doesn't conk out when a cold solder joint snaps off or something. And I was going to say finally, but it's not finally. But one thing, let's just put this, by the way, into the box of bits. One thing I want to, where's my blades, man? Blades, man. I want to just check in a second is you little tiny bits and bobs. Now these Guitar Tech pickups astonishingly appear to be 4-wire. That's amazing. We're going back to 2-wire with these Warmans, and there's no coil splitting or anything involved in here. But that's quite surprising to see something come back. Something as budget as this with 4 wires. Now we've got, not unsurprisingly, we've got a bit of a loose jack plug socket here, and this is absolutely the zone of many a problem. So I'm going to tighten it up, but before I do that, I'm going to actually take this out and examine it, because there's no point tightening it up if it's already half broken off. The solder's half broken or something, or it's touching or frayed or whatever. So the thing about common sense thing about wiring and jack plugs is the jack plug is one area in the wiring train that gets hammered with a lot of forces, because the jack's always been stood on, pulled around and waggled from side to side and so on. So what you get, blimey, this is on an incredibly short wire. Holy moly. Hey fella, how have you done this? Woohoo! That's something else. Let me just get my head around. So the ground of this pickup has gone straight to the jack. Let's come up to here, and they presumably share. This is where they common ground out up here. That's a weird. I've done this before myself actually, but it doesn't half look weird. There was a reason I did it, but I can't imagine why the factory would do this for an Encore. Sorry, you can't see anything, can you? My apologies. You're even plugged in. No, you're not. We're just doing this on battery power. How cool. That's now on the floor. Yeah, so what we've got down here, now let's get something with colour on it so you can actually see me pointing. So we have the, what do I have? Oh no, okay, no, that's not so, no, it's not so, that's not so silly. It's just very tight. So we have the switch output comes down to here. We have the, forget what I said about the jack going, the earth going to, it is earth, but it's the earth from the switch. So this is a setup where the pickups go to the pots, the output from the pots with the tone taking effect goes up to the switch, and then the whole output gets switched through the switch back straight to the jack socket, which is one way of wiring it. Other way you can do it is you can go through the switch first and then down to the pots, and then from the pots to the jack. But I don't know quite what the arguments either way are. But anyway, the thing I wanted to show you was these two little clusters of paired wires, and those little babies in there, that one there and that one there, those are the coil split pairs. So yeah, 4-wire pickups, and so this tells you there are the incoming wires from the pickup here and here, and then that's the back out to the jack. So actually what they've not, unless I can, is this the output? Who knows? Unless I can lengthen this a little bit, and there seems to be a bit of spare wire here. Sorry. Yeah, we can get a bit, oh thank goodness. We can get a bit, and that gives us a little bit of pull out to here just to check this, otherwise we were a bit stuck. Now, I haven't used this chappy for a while, but while I'm doing this, it's always a good option to hook you up to something a bit more useful. So I'll put my round thing over there. Now that's the jack output. For some reason this place feels really dark, and I've got as much running in here as I can bleed afford. Let's see where the light goes. No. Hello light, where's your bulb? Right, that goes to there. We'll bring this through here, along the back, see if we can get a bit more light on the proceedings. Hooray! Okay, maybe. Right. Yeah, so my main objective was to check this joint here, and it actually looks fairly ropey. So I'd want to strengthen that, then I'll put it back into there, then I'll cut these pickup wires and pull them out. I don't want to, well, I think I've got to unsolder them at some point, but it's just, I like to, I don't know why, I just like to go cut and get them out of there, but I have to be a bit more diligent than that. So it's just hard to see where we're going in here because it's so, this is tangled up a bit. So that one doubles round and goes to there. Trouble is, as soon as you start having to move things around, who knows what's going to happen. So we've got two grounds here. We've got black and a is this even connected to this? I can't see what's coming out of here. Okay, we've got a jump over, what we got here, it's going to the output to the switch, and the output to the tone pot, fine. The middle one is input from the thingy pickup, and that's going to the middle, and there's that, so there's yellow going to the input, there's a white and red pair tied off, and then there is both. Is that even connected with this, or is it just, holy mackerel, I can't see. No, actually what it is just a stump. This has been fiddled around with quite a few times. There's just a stump of earth wire. That's quite interesting. Just a little stub. Somebody's cut something off there before. Okay, so we are 4-wire on these Guitar Tech pickups. And we've got straightforward earth. No, it's not. It's a 5-wire. I can see it now. There's a blue and a bare that go to the ground on the side. They've actually put it on the side of the pot here. So I'm going to try and snip that. Snipped. This is from the bridge pickup, and then we've got the little yellow to the hot lug. Hot lug, baby, tonight. Okay, so that's the bridge pickup. We're going to need to pull that out. Now the thing about pulling it out is, to be honest, we don't need all this, right? We just want it to come smoothly out when the time is right. So, I mean, it could be used again sometime, but right now it's not the #1 priority. So we have the yellow going into the middle of the hot lug of this pot. So that's snipped, and I'm going to cut off, if I can do it without cutting anything else, cut off the blue and the bare, and that's the neck. Alright, yeah, neck. Neck is that one. Okay, so that's my 2 pickups cut back. And actually, I'm not even going to replace them immediately. What I'm going to do, hope you can see nicely, I'm going to take out these pickups. I'm going to then, while the pickup ring footprint is out of the way, I'm going to take advantage of that to clean all around, because that's one of the things I like to do, is also I can really quickly give this a clean over. Now I don't even have to go near the buffer, and if there was some serious scratching, or you know, I was being paid to tidy up the finish, then I might obviously look at that. But as it stands, I've got a scratch remover material paste that actually does a brilliant job of just cleaning up the surface. It's a bit like a T-cut, only a very mild but very effective sort of T-cut. Okay, so there goes the bridge. Now it's got R rhythm on it, but just because we aren't easily confused, I'm going to write the word B on there as well. And this one comes out as well. It's a little bit of a tight fit, so I'm going to feed it through. And that helps not having all those gubbins on the end, you see. And that's going to be called neck. Oh, they call it front and back. No, front and rear, okay? So I call it neck and bridge. So, for those interested people, what do we have inside our Encore E99 blaster? Well, it's wood. It's not laminate. We have we have shielding paint, that's for sure. We really do. We've got the switch wire comes in and goes down through to there, and that's broken. That's interesting. We'll reattach that. Very interesting. That is already broken. I wonder if that wasn't working then. Okay, there's a few things to do, but also what I'm going to do is take off these strap buttons too, because they're loose. So I'm going to put on new felts and then put them back in. If they don't tighten up to my satisfaction, then what I'll do is I'll find slightly oversized screws and do that version to make sure they stay on, because again, that's a all important little fitting which does come under a lot of stress and eventually breaks down at some point as well. I just managed to fling it. There it is. Okay, so these pots, I can get up close to those. I don't have to take them out to clean up. Could do, but it's a lot more fiddle. If I took them out, you could say it might make it easier to rewire things in. But having said that, 4 of these things floating about on top of here does not an easy task make. So I'm just looking down here. First thing I want to check is this is loose, so that's always an area that could do with being done up. Now I've got a, where's it gone? Here it is. A device very kindly given to me which may help this process along. And I've got another device, a device I devised, a device that I could push in the side. Look at this, you'd like this. A sort of semicircular D-shaped object that with a bit of grit on it, grit paper, can shove in there and it stops it turning. Then I can go back to here and go Is it the right way around? I'll try the other one. There you go, look at that, beautiful. What a great tool. Do up, you devil. Right, not going to move. So that was great. One given to me, thank you very much. One made by me, thank you very much. To get little jobs done. So that's looking okay in there. Don't need to do anything with that. So before I want to put any pickups back in, here's what I'll do. I'll get the number 2, I think, yeah, number 2 goo, and give you a sort of a view of how nicely this comes out. Now this is not for, I'm not trying to refinish and turn an old guitar into something new. I'm just going to show you what a few relaxing minutes of gentle elbow grease can do. And I'll sort of stop it there for a minute. And this is a tiny amount of this material, which is lucky because it is quite expensive. Having said that, didn't have to do much, and suddenly, pow! We've got this beautiful, incredible shine, and that I'll do more of that in a minute. But not only does that do a fantastic job of that, it also will take something like this tired old looking headstock, which had we not done this, it would remain. We can only get into those around those tuners so much. You can't get really very far with it. So this lets me. I also can clean up all that little over spilled Milliput from yesterday. So we're just the little tiniest dab. Now there are still scratches in here, but I'm not aiming to remove them. I'm just using this stuff as a kind of really nice quick cleaner. And there you go. Look at that. Sort of new lease of life to an old dog. And that's what I enjoy doing, so that when Rich gets this bag, it'll feel, not only will it play like a new guitar, but it'll also look like one as well. Now here we've got a bit of the classic house paint hits headstock, and this stuff is brilliant because, unless I'm mistaken, usually with a bit of water in as well, but this stuff just takes that house paint and slowly and surely gets rid of it. Bit of elbow grease, of course, but stick with it and suddenly that house paint is no more. Going all the way around the top edge as well, and then you've got basically a revitalised looking headstock, and it's a clean up and a little bit of a polish at the same time, and it's really impressive. And you can do the same. While I'm at it, I'll do the same with this. Now it may get mucky again as we handle it and put it back together and do all that stuff, but this is great. It'll have taken the main bulk of grime off it, such that the only thing you need to do next is a bit of a kind of wipe down the next time. There you go. Now I can put the tuners back on that and it looks almost like a new neck. And we've still got this front bit to do, obviously, but that's how nice it is. And now we can do the same with the back, and that will come out much nicer as well. Getting a bit mucky on here, so I probably want to clean up a bit before I do that thing. Okay, I bet people will be really keen to see me putting the pickups in, although it's fairly straightforward. Let's put a blob here and here. I mean, this is just going to be boring stuff, so don't expect fireworks. Again, I've done the stupid thing. I've gone up to the up to the little plastic thing and got it stuck down the sides of it, but it'll clear up. And it really can be, I mean, I sometimes take more time than you need, but this can be really quick kind of scrub through, and it does come up fantastically well for a surprisingly little amount of attention. The annoying bit is going in and out of the pots, I have to say, but once you've got there, it works all right. And if you can't quite clean up around the pots, as I say, it's okay because the knobs cover any last little swirl over that you can't quite get rid of. That's if you don't want to take the pots off, which I'm choosing not to do in this case. So you can see it's little goes a long way, and then you can scrub it all off, get rid of any excess. The other thing is, when you got it apart like this, is make sure that you check the pots anyway for tightness. At this point, just like the jack socket, another critical area where things break very easily are the pots themselves, because they're constantly being moved, and wiring and movement don't go together, so you don't want to be sending this guitar back without checking that the pots are retightened, and even if they're the same ones and you haven't upgraded them or anything like that, you want to make sure they're tight. So as you can see, difficult to get in and out, so you do the best you can do without removing them. But you can see why it can be so much easier to take them off, because you get much easier access. So I've got a bit of a cleaner rag here for the final bit. And you can see how great it looks, considering it's an old budget Encore blaster. It probably didn't cost more than about 100 quid new, possibly even with an amp thrown into the deal. Yeah, very inexpensive things in their day. I've got somebody's hair caught up in this. Probably Claire's red looking hair. Out this end. Okay, so that's just like a little bit of fun, just because I like clean looking things. And with anything black, as soon as you've cleaned it up on one face, it starts to accumulate muck, and then you can sort of go around the edge. And on the edges, I tend to use what's already on the cloth. I tend to find that it cleans gunge off pretty well without chucking more material on. Come on. Okay, that's the sides. Go through quite a lot of this nice clean cloth business. Oops. And then really, I've just got a quick bit over the back here, and this is fairly clean, so it shouldn't take too long. And I shall put this out of the way after that. And then the main things I'll do, whoops, probably even too much, you see, it's pretty efficient stuff. Then I'll get onto fitting pickups and then sorting out polishing out the frets. So you can see how the cavities on these things are always full of all the buffing compound from the factory polish job that it gets, and it just builds up and you can't stop it. It's just kind of hazard, occupational hazard for this. Fairly good for now, and then it sort of polished down or rubbed down afterwards. Okay, so a couple of things, get them back together. Let's get the strap buttons on. There's some felts. You got any spare screws? No, they're not the right ones. Strap button felts we've got. Often it's just a case that these things need tightening. But we'll find out the hard way if that isn't true here. Right, dig them out of here again. I'll check the power going into the camera any minute now. Now for this, it would make more sense to use one of these with what screw head do I need? Not that one really. Yeah, it's nice and tight actually. Sorry about the crap view. Okay, get this one in. It's good too. Alright, so we got those tightened up. A couple of things I want to check then. That's the tightness of the pots. How well you can see. Nice. Limited thing really, because you have to hold them by hand, which I find is a very difficult thing, constraint. I was trying to rotate them around a little bit so I can get better access to the lugs. Again, that's really difficult to do because you're only holding it with your bare hands, and that one's in the wrong place. I don't really need to reach that one, but I'd rather it was facing inwards in case I had to do something to it. So like that. Thank you. Okay, so I've got good access to all of those. That's come off, that's got to be replaced, and this needs to be resoldered and tightened up. So while it's off, we can tighten it up by hand, which is it's actually a bit badly put on, full stop. So let's just set this back a bit. This through a bit. Give it something to bite onto at least. Then try and turn it with this. You don't have any good grip. That's something I'm sure of is a decent device for holding on to jack socket nuts, because they're really crap. Full stop. And then if you can get to hold it with something that's digging your fingers to pieces, you can get a bit more of a grip on it, and hopefully that will stay put for a bit. It's actually quite a difficult fit, so these lugs are sticking out too far. Right, now what I'm going to do is, while we're at it, I'm just going to heat this particular noisy soldering iron. It likes to interfere with the amp, and I'm going to, how are you doing battery wise? We're going to conk out in a minute. I'm going to find me a charger plug. I haven't got enough hands. On. find the lead, come back up to here, go into the camera. Blimey, sorry about this, live television and stuff. We charged? Yeah, no, they seem to be alright. Okay, that's, have you charged up yet? Noisy. Okay, I just have to stay noisy for a minute when I'm doing this. That's tough. Okay, so I've got that tightened up, but what I don't like is these connections here, and there's so little room that the whole thing is kind of yanked into one position. And just pull a bit extra room. It's not brilliant, but it's better than nothing. Okay. Right. Let's get the grabbing thing for a minute while it buzzes away at me. Can't really see, I'm sorry. It's not a good view for you. It's a crap gripper thing. They are so rubbish, these things. So this is, tends to be always pulling in one direction or the other, so it's going to want to fall out straight away. Probably going to spring out any second now, but hey. It has sprung out, as I suspected. It also doesn't want to go through this hole. It's kind of protesting. Gonna need several hands. So I made a huge great blob of solder, and it doesn't want to heat up and go through properly. Let's see if I can get it to soak up. You stay there. It is a horrible aspect of not having enough room to work. Look at this, I'm under tension trying to get this fed back in, and it's not really going to want to play ball with me on this. We'll try, but if it doesn't go, okay. This earth one isn't even sealed off altogether, so it looks a bit lousy, full stop. Again, it's going to want to pop off probably, so I have to be prepared for that. Come on, lug. Eat the whole lug up, will you? This is a bit of a crappy joint, but it's struggling because I can't keep it still adequately. I might be able to do it this time with that holding it in place. Thank you. line up the holes, change the thingy, step down the torque, get some screws ready. Those are big ones, those are big ones. Those are those, 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 and here are these. Great. It's even worse. Go in and stay in. Thank you. Sorry you can't see this, I'm just getting this done before I lose any more screws. So, reason for that was to improve that solder joint, tighten up the jack socket altogether, and make sure that it was going to last longer. So that's all done up again. Okay, so those are those bits. Now I guess while we're at it, it makes sense to do the pickup part next, which is kind of, alright, let's do it while we're at it. Okay, so we need to remove the old pickup. On both sides. Very difficult to manhandle. Now these come with their own screws, so we'll leave aside the Guitar Tech screws for the time being, and the Guitar Tech pickup. Sorry, we'll take the neck pickup from Warman. Please take note, once this pickup has been installed or modified, you're dead. So 2-wire jobby, and there's the neck one with its screws nicely attached. So first thing we want to do is get our thing the right way around, facing forward, neck pickup. Sorry about this noisy soldering iron interfering with the stereo thing. And we're going to get this on, get it lined up if we can, get it to bite, and then switch to the other side. Very primitive and fiddly part of any process, this, as you can probably tell if you've done it before. It's, you know, late 40s technology, if that. Okay, neck facing forward. Plug our wires through. 2 wires, a hot and a ground. Now this is an interesting thing that took me ages to kind of figure out or learn or whatever you might say, but it just didn't seem to be logical to me to begin with. And in fact somebody asked me this question yesterday. They said, it was Gavin. Yeah, Gavin asked me this question yesterday. He said, which is the hot and which is the ground? And the bit that's hard to sort of get your head around is that the real answer, the true answer, is whichever you choose. And that seems completely bizarre because, you know, we're used to following the wiring diagrams that tell us exactly what to do, and if we get it wrong, it goes horribly wrong and doesn't play and makes a noise and bizarre, unexpected things happen. But the truth of it is, when you're asking on a pickup like this, a 2-wire pickup, which is hot and which is ground, right? The pickup itself doesn't really care. Now yes, there is a bare one, and there is one that's got a shielding on it. Shielding, you know what I mean? Cool, plastic around it. And it sort of implies that the you're going to use the shielded one or the sheathed one as hot and the bare one as earth. or ground, right? And that's fine. And you go ahead and do that, and then you do the same with the other one, and everything works nicely. You follow the wiring diagrams and you have no surprises. Okay, now I'm just going to write on this. In fact, I'm not going to write. I'm going to put a black dot on this. If I can find where I put the damn pen again. Right, this black line on this, right, means it's the neck. Don't know why, but it does. Yeah, so as long as you do the same with both your pickups, everything works. But you could do the opposite as long as you did it with both pickups. So if you decided to choose, for the purposes of this, to treat your bare wire as your hot and attach it to the hot lug of the volume pot or to the switch, wherever it goes, then you could do exactly the same with the other pickup, and lo and behold, I'm just going to say white equals neck. You could do it as long as you did the same way round with your other pickup. They would both work absolutely fine. If you happened to do kind of opposite on each of the pickups, then what you'll find is they'll be out of, whenever they're on together, they'll be out of phase with each other, which will make them sound thin and scooped. And of course, you know, there are guitars that do that deliberately. For example, Brian May's Red Special is one of a number, but a lot of people build in phase switching into their guitars, into their pickups, their wiring systems. And basically, a phase switch means you reverse the polarity kind of on the fly using a switch of some sort. And by switching it, you switch effectively make the bare wire live and the sheath wire ground, and all back again. And I've got this right way around. Yes, thank you. And in so doing, you can have this out of phase at will. So that's how it works. But like I said, why does it not matter to the pickup which wire is which? And it doesn't matter to the pickup because the pickup effectively is just one, or in the case of a humbucker, two long coils of wire connected together, or in the case of these P90s or single coils, just one long wire. And what you're handling there is the start and the finish of that long wire. And the humbucker doesn't really care which one you connect to ground, as long as one of them is connected to the ground, to the earth, and it doesn't care which one's connected to hot, the live lug of the pot, as long as one of them is, as long as the other one is, I should say. And it doesn't care which you use, as long as when you use more than one pickup, you remember to do it the same way for both, and that's all there is to it. So the technical answer to which one is hot and which one is earth is neither. It's whichever you choose, so long as you do the same with both. However, if you're following somebody's wiring diagram, like Seymour Duncan or something, then they're going to be referring to the wiring conventions that they know from their from their setup. So you might as well follow that and stay with the program. Okay, so we have the neck here and the bridge with lots more spare wire, and this is a simpler affair. Well, I say simpler, but we still have a real struggle to get down in here. Oh my lordy, these things pass underneath these things and get in the way. So this is actually, at this level, this is quite a difficult little bit of wiring to do. You've got kind of wires sneaking underneath and getting in the way of things, and everything is majorly close to everything else. So I'm going to remove you. I'm going to do it now. I'm not going to whip that and get a cup of tea or anything. I'm going to get you sort of involved here as close as we can get. It's not very close, is it? I need to get where I can see it, and so do you. Well, that's as good as I'm going to get for you. I hope that's acceptable. I'm going to need my pliers to pull out some old gunge. So I have to basically free up some old wires first, and to do that I'm going to need a bit of help from keeping some wires that I don't currently need out of the way. And this will be the first one I use, or the neck thing, and then I'm going to come in with the bridge afterwards, but let's just try and keep them out of the way. We've got a repair to do on this thing here, which is going to be a bit of a handful. We've got to basically get into both of these little places down here, the middle lugs on both of these pots. Right, so I have to be able to get what's on there off without melting the hell out of the other things. Now this one has snapped off, and that came around here. Okay, that's where it's gone from, so we can move that out of the way, but remember to replace it. Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get in here and I'm going to remove this wire. Okay, and there it comes. That's the yellow, and that's the hot into that lug, and the same again over here. Get in there, soften the solder up, and get the remains of that wire out. So that is going to be our new, in the case of the neck, that's going to go in there. Now, as I say, what I've done is I've knackered something's knackered, probably me, knackered the red wire over there, so I'm going to find something else. What can I use? Anything will do really, but that's alright. Let's have a bit of pink for this job. We'll have a little bit of pink wire. We will cut it back with something which is now missing. That will do. What I'm also interested in with an old guitar like this, or not old actually, a relatively old guitar, is it's got the shielding paint, and I can see there is a bridge ground, although I can't actually see where the bridge ground comes from and goes to. It's this green one, I guess. That's the bridge ground. What I don't know is there anything connecting the shield to ground, because that's what you need for it to work as a shield, theoretically. So we'll kind of look at that. I mean, there are those who say it doesn't really matter much on a humbucker guitar, because they say the humbucker is not susceptible to the same sort of radio frequency interference. However, I'm not sure. Some people don't hold that to be the case, so there's a divergent opinion on that. I haven't even had a chance just yet to put into action the new soldering station that JT gave me on Saturday. I've been really looking forward to having a go. So just here I'm going to fit in this little pink wire, and that's my input to my popped tone pot. And then on the other end here I have to now join this up to this one here. I have to get it to go through. I'm going to need some pokey pulley things to here, get that out, and I run the risk of this white wire coming out at the same time, and I've got these darned black wires in the way, so this is a bit of an absolute fiddle. It actually might be better if I pulled that white one at the same time, just give me the room to do it. So that there's the green one out of the way. These are sort of doubled over and in the way of each other at the moment. Okay, so what I've got to get out of here is this red one. It's got to come out. Out it comes, and so does the white. And the white and this pink one have to go back in together, preferably with as direct a route as possible. Now, always a good idea, if you can, is to connect the two of them up before you go in, but not always possible to do. Sometimes you can't twist them, or they don't want to work that way. So it's easier to wind them together before you twist them. So if you had a piece of, have we got enough room? Yeah. It's difficult to pull the wire shielding. What's the word? Sheath, plastic sheath. Difficult to pull it off over a already soldered end. So I'm going to sort of try and do it. But if you can't do it, then your alternative is to chop the gnarled soldered bit off. But I'm kind of a little nervous about not having enough material to do that with. I do here on this one have enough material, so I can just snip that and give myself an easier time to get a long run up. That's what I need to do. Sorry, you won't be able to see this very well at all. Now what I can do is to give myself enough room to twist these pair together. And if I put a bit of solder on that, I have a much better chance now of getting both of these through the lug at the same time, which is where they have to end up being. Right, tin that, remove that, cut that end off, and what I like to do is put a little bit of a pointy angle on it so it has a chance of poking comfortably through the lug when I lay on a bit of heat. Okay, so left and right hand game now. Left hand solder, so get it wet. Right hand holding the piece in place. Just going to have a quick look, make sure that's in. That's in, very good. So that's that connected back up. We still now have to go in with our neck pickup, and we go in with the little bit down here. The white is going to be the hot in this case. As long as we do the same for each, we're okay. So we're going to go down with this one, and again I'm going to need to left hand it with the heat. There you go. And I might just give this a little bit more. Very difficult to tell whether you've got a good join on from this distance and in such cramped circumstances. So what you can do, go down in there again, put some heat on and throw on some extra solder. I think that should be alright. Cut off the excess. Right, and then all we have to do now is just bring this ground over the top, and we're going to stick that down onto the top of the pot hopefully without causing anything else to jump out of the way. That's the idea. We just want it tagged down, please. Quite difficult to do without everything else jumping off at the same time, but there we go. So that's the neck pickup in place. Now we can let go of this, being the bridge ground. As I say, nothing I can see right now going to the going onto the shield. Is it shielding? It might be connecting through the pots actually. That might be the answer to it. I hope so. Okay, so this one was holding that out of the way, which was useful at the time. So let's spin it round and yank it over there. And now we've got the bridge pickup. Same schema. This time we've got to get our way into the middle again. We've got no problem with the jumper across the tone pot, that's fine. So we've got a bit of a clearer, easier run on this one. There isn't a lot of solder where the ground wire is attached, so I'm going to take the liberty of adding a bit more, another blob of solder over here that I can use for my own grounding purposes. just makes it a little bit easier for me. Where am I going? Right, again, left and right-handed approach. I can even hold the end of this thing. Down we go. Now, you never know how well that's joined, and then if you want to put a bit more solder on you can, but then you always run the risk of the whole thing falling apart, just zipping out like that, which is just done. Then you have to try and do it again, but this time you're starting with a little bit more solder than you had before, and hopefully that feels happier once it's in. Okay. Cut back the little excess bit that we don't need. Get in there. Yep. And then we bring this earth over the top. And what I always now like to do, I've learned, is when you have an earth, you don't want too much earth wire sort of flopping about, hitting other things where it shouldn't be. So if you can, on a feed from a pickup like this, is drag the earth as far over the top as you can, without it being so close that you're going to absolutely, without a doubt, burn the sheathed hot wire. So we want to get this earth fitted onto the top, but sort of out of harm's way, kind of thing. Come on, that's about right. Ta-da. So, bridge fitted, neck fitted, everything can be moved and put back together again. Now, that should all be wonderful. Of course, we can never be certain of that. So what I'll do is I will propose putting this back together. But before we do anything else, so we can rest our minds, I will silly me, I've tipped all the silly tiny ones into there, which I'm going to need some of. Yeah, so the idea is, let's test it to make sure before we get carried away. Do this one as well. That's tightened up. So you see how we've gone round basically and tightened as much up and secured everything where possible. At the same time as doing some cleaning and housekeeping, and hopefully all of that together makes a longer life and a nice shiny impressive guitar. Okay, so I've got a little bit more to do here. I've got a bit of resin to make up to get these, keep these down. We could do it with glue. Let's do it with glue. It's probably a better material. Tight bond. Maybe just slightly easier to release in future. Should be. It's always going to be difficult to get something out of here that's been glued in, but it's a choice between that and it popping out all the time, or standing up on its, I shouldn't have done that, silly me, standing up on its hind legs like it was just then, which you don't want because potentially it could come right out. So what I want to do is add some glue into the hole, the other way round basically. So I'll do it on both sides, but it's more required on this side. So basically I'm just going to spoon some tight bond into there and a little bit into there, I'm sort of trying to avoid as much as possible the side with the ground wire, because we don't want to disturb that or cover it up with glue. And you get these things back in here. I'm going to give them a healthy little thwack, and then we'll leave them overnight basically to dry. In fact, I think I'll just do that now. Leave that. I'm going to hang this up and leave it overnight. And that way I'll test it in the morning and we'll know that it's working and fix it if it isn't. Now we can concentrate on the neck from now, and once we've done that, then we'll be ready to put it back together and finish the setup. So there we go. New pickups installed, everything else refitted, most things refitted, things tightened. Sort of heading in the right direction. Now let's have a look. Next stage in this, I'll put those pickups in there. In fact, let's just put them in some sort of wrapping for future use, so they don't get covered in bits and everything magnetic stick to them. Not altogether bad pickups, 4-wire for a budget price. So, but as I say, for my liking, a little bit over synthetic and sparkly, but a personal preference. But I hope Rich is going to like the difference, and it will suit his style as a learner, looking for a more melodic output. That's what I'm hoping will come out as. Okay, so that's the spare bits for now over there. Let's get them. Oh, thank you. I'll put it down. Get all of this tidied up. So the next part of it is to take care of frets, which is good old-fashioned polishing process. And I won't really kind of bore you with that. I'll just tell you. So we've leveled the frets, we've reprofiled them so they're now all arch-shaped again. And what I'm going to do basically is just spend some time cutting and using some masking tape to get the whole thing masked off to protect the fingerboard, which I haven't yet cleaned, and I will at the end. I'll clean the fingerboard and re-oil it, but it's a final kind of part of the process, because what I don't want is oil on the fingerboard now. I want this masking tape to stick and stay in place for the duration of the time that I'm trying to polish the frets. So mask it all off. I'm going to use a range of sandpapers or wet and dry papers from 600 to 1000 to 1500, and then I'm going to switch to micromesh sheets to do sort of fine polishing. And by the end of that we'll have a nice shiny set of frets, perfectly level, ready to play, and levelled in a way that allows me to achieve the best level with the least amount of, the most accurate fret level with the least amount of fret metal loss, which is kind of an ideal situation really. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to you when I've done all of that, and we'll be ready to oil the fingerboard, put new strings on, and go. Alright, so thanks for watching so far. See you a bit later. Cool, blimey, governor. Well, it's big Brexit day here in the UK, and the government has just lost it's whatever it was, I don't know, the vote on its bill, no, on its deal, yeah, Brexit deal, and lost it by 230 whatchamacallits. And so it's kind of all going Pete Tong and pear-shaped over here, but it's, you know, interesting political times and all that. I won't go into it. What I want to do just now is check Rich's pickups as they stand, and just make sure they're all working as lovely. That's what I wanted to do just there, but I might as well leave that there. Now, one thing I'm planning to do, plotting you might say, is we have this very rattly buzzy thing, bridge, and I did a test last night, an experiment, wherein upon I wax potted one of these, not this one, but one of these, and I have to say the result was pretty good, in that it kind of locked down all the loose bits. Now it does change slightly, obviously you get a bit of wax that you can't get rid of, every single last bit of wax, but I actually think it could well be worth the compromise, because of all the things you don't want, rattling tunematic bridges is high on the list. It really spoils the experience of playing. So I'm tempted to, well no, put it another way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to refit the bridge as is, Rich's original bridge, and then what I'm going to do is after that I'm gonna see if it rattles when we've got it all back together and strung up. And if it does, then I may slacken the strings off at the once and give it a bit of a potting. I've got the wax in the house kind of ready to go, so that will just be a sort of last thing, but I'll do the intonation first. The thing about wax potting it is, of course, you can still change the intonation at, that's my stepson shouting, at a later date, because wax obviously isn't exactly hard. It just well, it does for the bridge what wax also does for the pickups, which is keep pesky things that would otherwise vibrate still. So anyway, that's the plan. So right now, having got the pickups changed, everything's working. God, Thomas, he's so loud. That's about 50 yards away in the house, in his room, with the windows up, and he's shouting at internet friends. Anyway, so yeah, so I shall get this all together, and we'll see whether we need that wax potting game or not. So this is the fun part, excuse the close-up, because as you remember, it was only seconds ago, I know, I've already done the fret leveling and all those complex things. So now we're in the putting it back together again and setting up to play nicely mode. And one of these is going to be the top thing. Do they all look about the same? They do. So the nice thing about the setup I use is that once you've done it, like in that early stage, by setting the playing action and then leveling the frets, because it's done with the guitar in playing position, what happens is you only have to restring it with the same gauge strings, and hey presto, the guitar returns to the setup that you had previously. Now I guess because we've taken the bridge off, it won't go to the same setup, but what it means is it will, when we put the action back to where I want it, the neck will already be leveled to fit or to work with that action, so we don't have any worries about it not playing. There's a lot of dust on there. I've been sawdusting, you know the word, sanding. So I'll give this a clean down indoors when it's done as well, to get any dust off. So yeah, that's what's really good about this method. So you can take it all into its component parts, and when you put it back together and load it with the same gauge strings, the neck returns to the position it was in when you did the fret leveling. and therefore the frets go back to being equal, level, relative to each other, and thus play beautifully. Now, like I say, there's a bit of surface dust moving around here. I need some more of these cloths. I always run out really quickly. It's trouble when you have no. Oops, there goes the pickup cover. Who cares? Who wants the plastic on their seats? Not I. Yeah, problem with you're working with shiny black surfaces, and they really attract dust. So you can never keep a nice looking black Les Paul copy black very long. One thing I'm going to do just now is get some oil for the fingerboard. I've got the fender neck there stripped back, and I'm going to start building up some layers of poly tonight to get the colour right, and build up some thickness on it, and then I'm going to take it to my friend John Bruce of John Bruce Guitars for him to finish the top layers, which will give it a sprayed on look. Actually, I'm saying that, I'm just doing that for precision's sake. Actually, my experience has been that the necks that I do by hand look exactly like necks done with spray. The only difficult part with doing stuff not in a factory, and I even, you know, it's even hard to do unless you've got sort of a lot of experience doing it, is flat surface areas. They are quite difficult to work with. It's very easy to burn through a clear coat into colour if you're not careful. And but when you're working with just the back part of a neck, for example, or a maple lacquered neck, lacquered fingerboard, which you're going to put frets over, you can get very good results with the wipe on poly and or spray on poly and or spray on nitro. So but I guess the only bit you have to really work hard at, well, not the only bit, the bit that is, I find most challenging, is the bit where you have to flat down. So I find it almost impossible to get a flat mirror surface like this. Even though I've got a buffer, etc. It just, any slightest unevenness shows up. Of course it helps if you get the thing flat to begin with. That's by far your best bet. So having, for example, if you're spraying with, at least I'm going to go in, hold on. If you're spraying with, let's say you're doing it from the ground up and you're doing black, these things, this is weird, this is buckled. That's interesting. So it's a curved back. How weird. Yeah, so if you're going to do it, you're probably better off starting from bare wood, getting an absolute flat surface if you can, and actually the question of whether or not you can actually get a completely flat thing to begin with. Well, they've done, this is unusual, this is highly unusual. They've got two different length screws here. However, the ones at the back are supposed to be, I've got them in the right order, the ones at the back are supposed to be in the back. I'm just going to double check that. Somebody's, this is not conventional. In fact, I'll tell you what's not conventional. Yeah, they are two different sets. I'm not comfortable ramming those all the way in, so just hold off a minute while I find a replacement for these long ones, because they didn't want to go in and I don't really want to be forcing them in. bits and pieces on the floor for now. That'll do. It's late, I want to stop. Okay, let's see what we've got. There's the ones we're a bit short. Pile of screws here to choose from. Those are the right length, but they're a little bit thin. There's 4 in there at the same size, but they've got a bigger head on them. That's about right. So that's a bit, excuse me, we've got some of the right thickness, but they're not long enough. We've got, these are the ones we're working with. So we go thinner, or we could go the same length narrower, or what have we got here? A set of 4. These are fat and chunky, but they're quite short and stubby. They are. Hey, right, I think we ought to try. I think we ought to put these aside, and I think we ought to try. Those are the real ones, those are 2 of them, and those are 2 that aren't, if you get what I mean. Let's try something the same length, slightly thinner. If it doesn't grip, we won't do it. On a lot of on a lot of guitars, I found, even on these old guitars, putting see, these are all the right length. Okay, if they don't work, let's try these as a last ditch. I found that putting on, converting to hex bolts is a really good thing to do. It's unusual looking for a start, but it also, it's not so bad on this, but some of these guitars are ply, some of the older ones, and if they're ply, they don't like being screwed and unscrewed too many times. I mean, what guitar does. So, right, let's start with the ones we know fit. One-handed stuff, it's always a bit weird. So that's there, and that was about the same length. So let's go corners. See if that fits. Let's just feel if it. No, it's too thin. We got short and stubby, but that won't hardly even go into the wood. We got long and, well, they were the ones that were in it before, but it made me uneasy. So these are going to go quite some way in. So I'll do these the same again. It's not my preference, but not in the absence of finding something more suitable, we'll go with what was in there. Yeah, it goes just a little bit tight. Click, click, go on with you. That's actually not going in any further, but that'll be okay. We've got some, we'll leave those and file them away as spares later on. Okay, so we're in a good place now. Now we've glued those bushes in, so we're going to have a better grip this time. It's not going to come levering its way out. And I can't remember where the bridge was sitting first time round, so we'll just put it on any which way we want, and then we can adjust it. Now that, how did I manage to do this? I am losing my mind, aren't I? I've managed to bring out the wax potted one. That's why it wasn't rattling a minute ago when I shook it. And that's how easy it is to get everything confused. readers. So I'm going to go in a minute and get the actual bridge. But there we go. Stop bar on. Oh, quick brush over. So where did I put the other one then? I had it lined up to wax pot in case we needed to, but that's fine. Okay, that one on there. Dunk. Pots back on. I like to turn them all to the same sort of position. Everybody has their own particular way of doing it, but I sort of start with the zeros facing me if I can. Hopefully they don't resist going on too much. Pots are funny things. Okay, that's our start point. Yeah, so who knows what the political scenarios are going to be like tomorrow. Everything all over the place. This is not put into play, this one. Come on. Thank you. It's not quite in the same position, but it's the only way it's going to fit on easily. Otherwise I'm going to be having to ram it down too far. Okay. This has got wax on it? It's got something on the surface of it. It looks like possibly a bit of wax or some glue. I think some glue from the paper, but that's unusual. Let's just get that off while we can. I'm assuming that's what it is. I don't want to get those silver letters because if they're anything like the Wilkinson ones, they'll be falling off quick as anything. That looks to be okay. Yeah. Right, that's that. Goes in Fine's bridge. Oh yeah, the other thing we've got to put in place now is our friend, the beautifully adjusted nut. And now this time, although it fits in and sits actually quite still, I will tack it down with a little bit of glue because I want it to stay in place. Now I'll do it first. Sometimes it's good to, you can use the strings to hold the nut firmly in place. But in this case I'm just going to push down on it and let it sit in place. Right. Line up, evaluate the string positions. There's a little bit of underhang, but that's fine. With these, getting the end to look perfect isn't my priority. The priority is getting them to work as well as they do, because they're a real advantage. Okay, this is still picking up loads of dust. Okay. Right, pause, go get the actual bridge. And that's where I had it, left it ready to be wax potted. So for now I'll just, I can get it undone, I'll just snip that off. Oh no, it doesn't need snipping, I can do that, I'll come back and use that again. Right, there is the bridge. Now, question people often ask is which way round, screws to the front or screws to the back? And my answer is whichever is easier for you to get to. For some people, if the action's really high, then screws to the front could be useful because you can get to them. Or if the action's quite low, why is this not going on? Because they probably need to be higher up. Thanks, you going to come and help? Right, that had to be raised a bit. Come on, chum, you sit on the stool, that's for you. Yeah, let's have some, do you want some warmth? No? Okay. Right, now we're in a position to fit the strings, the new strings. Now, with these, I'm only going to, when I fit new strings, all I really want to do with them, the most I want to do with them, in terms of manhandling them, is to stretch them, intonate them, and then be ready to put them in the bag ready for the owner to come and collect. In this case, if we need to, I'm not saying we do, but if we needed to wax pot the bridge, then we'd need to slack them off far enough one more time just to take the bridge off, but it would be the last kind of slacking off we'd need to do. Some people get get convinced that running the strings over the top of the stop bar changes the way the guitar feels to play. Honestly, I think that's, no, I'm not going to say psychological. I can't see any evidence for why that would be the case. Certainly haven't experienced it myself, but I haven't tried it lots. I've tried it on people's guitars that they've sent, if they sent it like that. But I can't really tell the difference myself. That doesn't mean that there isn't a difference, just I can't tell. But on top of that, I don't get any argument for why it would be the case. But equally, just because I don't know an argument why, it doesn't mean there isn't one. But what it does mean is that I'm always interested to know what that argument is, rather than just agreeing to it. Right, so here we go. New strings on. All the way through, over the bridge, all the way through. Back 1 fret's worth is my usual sort of take, and then hold it over the loose string first time round, press it down under the loose string and pull the loose string up the second time round. It usually makes about two revs. Now that's, I'm just now looking at where this all lines up, that's good. I don't want to put it under tension yet because I don't want it flipping this adjustable nut in the air, because the adjustable nut is just that, it has to be able to move, so technically it could flip out at this point. Obviously it won't once the strings are, the guitar's strung up. So this is a neat little way of doing the strings. Other people have different ways. So one way I can't stand, I'll be honest, is when people tie a little knot at the end. And it's like they do it because they think that stops the strings coming right off the tuners, which they never will do unless you, possibly with the E and the B at the thin unwound strings sometimes can do, if you haven't put enough winds on. So there is a case for that, but it just it actually makes it, from a tech point of view, it makes it one hell of a lot more annoying to get the strings off, because you end up having to cut them free and dig around with little sharp pointy things, and it massively increases the likelihood, chances of you gouging somebody's headstock at the same time, which is just absolutely what you don't want to be doing. So kind of, if you want to help minimize the rare chances of a tech dinging your headstock, then consider not using the tying a knot method on your strings, eh? Just a little bit of friendly advice. Okay, last thing to last. So like I said, the method I'm using is just to put on just enough to guarantee a firm grip, but not so much that it'll store up tons of unreleased slack, which is your kind of, along with the crappy nut slots, or grippy nut slots I should say, the unreleased slack is your other half of your tuning enemy, number one. So I just took delivery today of Dave's Washburn HB30 semi-acoustic guitar, and it's a beautiful looking thing, lovely slim neck, it feels like, anyway, narrow and slim, but straight away it was impossible to get it to stay in tune. And that was for both the reasons I just mentioned. One, because the slack hadn't been pulled out of all the strings. Now, you know, forget whether it's actual slack in the metal or whether it's just slack in the string train, but when I say string I mean everywhere that involves the strings, so call it the string train if you like. But anyway, so one thing is that I could still pull it and it was still going out of tune, and the second part was, as I was trying to tune it, I could hear it pinging through the nut slots, which is a surefire, almost guaranteed sign that you'll be getting unstable tuning, because the strings are sticking in the nut slots, and they're storing up uneven tension either side of the nut, and it kind of parks itself in a state of uneven tension, but you think you've got it tuned, which you have, and then you bend the string either with a tremolo or with your bends, or even hit the chord a bit hard, and what that does is that extra pressure then equalises out the pressure either side of the nut, so that your bit of pulling or whatever overcomes the friction that was holding the string in this uneven tension, and that kind of pings out, and you end up with a detuning as a result. So you know, you really want to get those nut slots done. That's why I like this, what do you call it, adjustable Tusq thing, developed for the Gibson Les Paul, and originally they put this new brass 0 fret system, adjustable nut with 0 fret. Right. Hang on, it wasn't adjustable. Why was it? No, of course it wasn't adjustable. How could it be adjustable? If it was a 0 fret, it's kind of a... Would it go up and down? I think it did. I think you could still adjust the first fret action by raising it or lowering. So it was a kind of adjustable 0 fret. That's what I'm trying to say to you. Anyway, legend has it that whilst it was a great, massive improvement, kind of obviously really, on their other kind of usual plasticky, bone, horrible, badly cut nuts, I think they kind of overlooked the fact that even nickel, copper nickel fret, 0 frets wear away like hell. The 0 fret is subject to permanent tension or permanent friction, and like these frets occasionally get touched with the strings. The 0 fret is the metal fret, well, you know, the 0 fret that lives on there, is always connected to the string, so that string constantly is wearing away on the metal. And of course they made it out of brass, which it looked great, but wore even faster than the copper nickel stuff. So as a result, people were developing notches very quickly. So anyway, I think as far as I understand, and I don't know the story very well because I didn't have one, I'm just going on what I've sort of observed, what it appears to be, come on, you can work, it appears that Gibson then replaced that, they brought out another nut unit that you replaced that was titanium. Yeah, titanium. So this is my second set of stretching, you'll note. So yeah, they made it in titanium, which I think you didn't get it free. It wasn't like, oh, sorry, you spent 1,500 quid, but here's a new one for, you know, with our apologies. I think you had to buy it. I could be wrong. But meanwhile, Tusq, I think Graphtec, were smart, and they spotted an opportunity to make this. Now this fitted the Gibson unit, and instead of being a 0 fret like the Gibson insert was, this thing reverted to being a conventional nut shape, because these guys knew what a lot of Gibson owners don't know, and when you hear Gibson owners complain about disarrangement of strings across the headstock, they all think that's why their Gibson doesn't stay in tune. Well, it isn't the case. I'll get the right string. It isn't the case. This works perfectly well. Tusq knew that, so they, instead of going to the hassle of trying to rearrange the strings or do anything fancy, because some people have the string butler and all kinds of solutions, they knew that there was nothing essentially wrong with this arrangement here. So they built this insert to still be adjustable, but to revert to the traditional kind of nut arrangement with the intonation and length coming from the front edge of the nut, and they made it out of Tusq. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, hey, I don't have to spend my life cutting nut slots. Now obviously this so far only works for me on Les Paul style guitars. 3-a-siders, but I have been making my own using bone and a tap and die, a mini tap and die set, making nuts for strat tele style guitars. So, and they work. I would kind of like to make a little bass footing plate for them, but so far the maple appears to be hard enough to withstand the little grub screws. So we're nearly at stable tuning. Now, what's changed down this end, of course, is the action, because we've taken the bridge off and on. So I'm going to redo it down to a nice low action that this guitar can now tolerate. And it's currently sitting at just over 2. So you can take that down by screwing it in clockwise, a couple of turns, and then we'll look at what we've got. And it's now just above 1.5. This is this bridge is not the best made, I have to say. I mean, it's a budget bridge, and the radius that it's describing is not very accurate. So what we've got now is one that is trying to be a 12-inch radius, but it's a little bit uneven between a couple of the strings. But as long as it plays for now and it doesn't rattle, that'd be my preference. This nut looks a bit odd because this guitar had that chopped away piece from where somebody had fitted. It didn't really show up before much until I put the white stuff in it, the Milliput in it, to kind of balance or level it out. But that's actually just a filler from where it was kind of curved away from the previous owner. Now that detuning, by the way, is less about having stretched the strings again, as more about lowering the bridge. I just realised my tuner is inside. It's an interesting chord. I have no idea what that is. What's that? Accidental. Okay, so now I've got it running at a nice low action down here, very low action up here. And at the moment, no buzzing, which is great. So whatever has happened between then and now, we've lost the original buzzing. May also be the fact that that buzzing, most of that sympathetic buzzing, may have been coming from the truss rod, which I think was in dead slack position in between. So I think putting a bit more relief into the neck, which I did, has helped that even that out. So as I don't have, okay, now where is it? One more screw, just one. I just need one more little. There was one more. It was there. It got stuck to something magnetically. How frustrating. There was one more, what do you call it, screw? You know the ones I mean. Tuner screw. I counted them out as I put all the tuners on. What did I do with it? That, there it is. Look at that. Look at that. Magnetically clinging to the side of my screwdriver. I thought I was going mad. Yeah, anyway, so that tightening up of the truss rod to get a little bit more relief into the neck seems to have cured what was buzzing then, or what was rattling, I should say, sympathetic rattle. So, all feeling good. So this thing is going to stay in tune as well now, which is the really important part for, especially for a beginner, you know, who wants to feel motivated to pick up a guitar off the peg or off the stand, and not to be fighting it. And it's incredible how demotivating it is when you pick it up. You have to spend a while tuning it. Play it for a bit, and then retune it. You'll notice there, you know, I've tugged it really hard, and that's all it's going out of tune even then. So yeah, lovely. That is a transformed guitar. Okay, so one last thing. It deserves to hear what it do sound like. And I think it's getting a bit late, so I won't play for long, but I want to try it out, but I also need to intonate it, and then it will be ready to go back in. And I know that Rich will be coming over on Saturday to pick it up. So let me just switch this into silent mode, so hopefully I don't get too frazzled. You probably still will. Oh, 1%. Oh God, do you know what? Have I mentioned just how much? I don't even know what I'm going to unplug here. Something's going to come off. How much I hate these batteries on these iPhones. It's the worst thing. Please just stay on long enough to connect you up. And no, it won't do it. Just work long enough for me, would you? Okay. Right. So, intonation time. Now, as you all know, the intonation is a matter of setting the precise length of string required for this neck, and you would think that would be the same length for all strings, but bizarrely it isn't. They each need their own length, individual length, and it's only mildly different, tiny bit different. At the moment, so let's take this up a teensy weensy fraction so we can get that last. That's going down the other side of the hill, so it's quite difficult. Strings, you're listening out for any pinging from the nut slots. Right, so let's just get back to a clean sound a minute. Let's do things sticking out that catch you out. Let's do the intonation. Okay, that's looking a bit on the short side, so I'll test a few. I would say everything's just a tiny fraction sharp. So, if I can find my screwdriver, that means I just want to lengthen everything a little bit. So I'm going to take this. This is where it gets a bit difficult because you can't access these things courtesy of Les Paul or whoever designed this bridge. Yeah, whoever designed this bridge deserves to have been punished. I mean, the funny part was that Leo Fender designed a trillion times better bridge for the Fender Stratocaster and actually the Telecaster, and he wasn't even a player, so they say. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling these top three for a start, all back, basically lengthening the string. The A and the D and the A seem about right. The E is a little bit short, and so you can see I'm struggling to reach the slotted screw part of everything, and short of undoing the strings and moving them all out of the way, it's quite difficult to do, which is why one reason I hate this type of bridge so much. So look at what we got here. I think these may be a fraction too tall. Let's take a look. Lower this. This will go out of tune, but it's okay. this was in here. There we go. Anyway, that's enough. We are intonated. Ooh, straps just come off. Look at that. We need a tiny bit of clean to get the dust off, but otherwise it's done. So there we have it. Encore Blaster E99. What I will do is I will include this little hex key is the word, on the back of the guitar for now. That is the nut adjuster, the adjustable nut adjuster, which comes with the package. So there we have it. Ta-da! Stay there. Make sure that that's safely there for the time being. So E99 budget guitar, made to play nicely, and I hope Rich enjoys many hours of learning on this thing. Intonated properly, low action, low first fret action as well, can be adjusted. The nut slot was in a bit of the nut slot was in a bit of a state, and it's not one I wanted to dig down any lower, so I've repaired or built up that tiny bit on that side so that it's level. I think that's where it should live. Anyway, better to be playing properly than to be looking pretty in my book. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. A budget guitar made to play as light and as well as anything you can get, costing a damn sight more. Okay, see you soon.